Welcome, everybody, to an all-new episode of the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. I'm Brian Ciano. Thank you so much for joining us. So we take our weekly look at everything going on in the world of combat sports, and we have plenty of action, as we have for weeks now. We had another PFL fight card at the beginning of this 2025 tournament, where we first saw the middleweights get involved, as well as some of the lightweights. So we started both those tournaments. We'll recap those in just a minute. We also have a PFL card we're going to start talking about for coming up next week, because that's going to air on Thursday. So we're going to make sure we get that in, get some preview in for you with the big boys, the light heavyweights and the heavyweights, before we get out of here. We'll also go out and talk to Tyrell, the heavyweight, making his debut for Lights Out Extreme Fighting. You know him from Bellator and the PFL. Now he's going to be fighting for our man Sean Merriman for the first time, headlining that card out May 10th in California as he continues his MMA career. We'll also talk about the fight we just saw in Omaha for the BKFC. They had a great fight night card there, as they always do. We'll catch up with our man, Jared, Captain Deadpool Warren, the former light heavyweight champ of the BKFC, who's trying to recover from that Richmond loss and get back into the title picture here, as he will fight May 2nd down in Clearwater, Florida, headlining that card, where there's going to be a lot of great fights on that one. We'll talk about that in a couple weeks in more detail. And then finally, we will preview what we might see this weekend out in Florence, Italy, where the BKFC will be fighting in Italy for the first time. Going to be a fight card that's a bit changed at the top, different storyline than what we thought we were going to get with that title defense by Chris Camozzi. We'll touch on that, but we'll also get plenty of other great fights, including a trilogy and some returners for the BKFC that we've seen before. All that coming up on the Combat Sports Report later on the show today. But let's get right into it. Let's talk about what we just saw with the PFL this past week over in Orlando. It was on ESPN. Earlier card this time, so you got to see a little bit, not to necessarily go for the replay the next day maybe. It was a 7 o'clock Eastern start, and we got to see a lot of action with the middleweights and the lightweights. Headline by, of course, Impa Kasanganay and Fabian Edwards. Kasanganay, the 31-year-old American, the former light heavyweight champion, finalist for the light heavyweight championship last year, dropping down to middleweight for this fight against Edwards, who was in, then out. Jordan Newman was taking over. Then all of a sudden, Fabian Edwards was back in, the 32-year-old Brit. Of course, coming off a couple losses to Eblin in his last couple fights in Bellator, now coming over to the PFL. And we thought that Kasanganay was going to get the win here because he's dropping down in weight, so he's going to have that power, maybe a little quicker than he was at light heavyweight. Much quicker starter than Edwards usually is. As we saw in the Eblin fights, that was a downfall for him. It didn't really get going until like the 4th, 5th rounds, and it was too late by then. Eblin had that one in the cards for himself already. Not the case in this one, as Edwards gets the 2nd round TKO in this fight. Now, Kasanganay was coming forward right away. They're both guys were trying to switch positions in the clinch, trying to work against each other in the cage, land some shots. But I thought that Edwards probably took round 1, 10-9. It could have gone either way, but he had a cut over Kasanganay's eye that's getting checked between the rounds by the doctor. And maybe that made him a little more aggressive in round 2, even more so than he was already, because, again, landing some good shots early on the feet. But just under 2 minutes into the fight, he's coming forward, and all of a sudden Edwards hits him with a flying knee. Continues to attack Kasanganay. Drops him with the left before landing some more shots when he's on the ground. Ref jumps in. Fight is over. Kasanganay now 18-6 with a loss. Edwards 14-4 as he improves with the victory. He'll face Josh Silveira next in the semis. He gets the victory in the PFL tournament, moving on to the semifinals. Says he felt good, but the job's not done, so we will see what else he can do. But he seemed very confident, very happy with the win, of course. Talked about how some of these PFL guys aren't used to the elbows, and the PFL should have brought that back a long time ago. As of course, we know this is the first time this year they're bringing it back in the regular season, because it's just a tournament. It's no longer where you have the regular season and then the playoffs, where you have to worry about cuts maybe costing you more and losing a fighter in a playoff situation. Now it's just fight, winner wins, moves on, loser loses. Maybe some of that stuff comes into play, but elbows, knees back into action for the PFL more so this year, and Edwards used them well against Kasanganay. Wasn't the final blows, wasn't the big things, but definitely helped throughout the course of the fight. At lightweight, you had Ghazi Rabadonov versus Mark Diakisi. Diakisi, the 32-year-old British fighter, the longtime UFC fighter, against Rabadonov, the 31-year-old Russian Bellator PFL fighter who was on a 10-fight win streak. Moves it to 11. We thought he'd get the decision victory. He decided to do it even quicker, gets the first round KO TKO just 32 seconds into the fight. There's a feeling out early, some kicks going back and forth, but Rabadonov caught one of those kicks by Diakisi, landed the big right, jumped on top, and just started unloading on him, as you see there. The finish, just one caught kick, one big punch, and then a bunch to follow. Ref jumps in. The opponent now, Dioxys 18-8. Rabadanov is 25-4-1, and he gets to face J.J. Wilson next in the semi. So a great fight there, a great quick win for him. Suffers no damage and can move on to his next opponent. Definitely one of the guys that we have to watch out for in this tournament, as we thought before. At middleweight, you also had Sadabu C, who we caught up with last week before the fight, against Dalton Rosta. C, the Swedish fighter, 38 years old, the Swedish Denzel. As we found out about his nickname, and lost 2 of his last 3 come in. Rosta, the 29-year-old American, didn't have any big names on his record coming in there, even though he had a great record. So we thought that maybe the veteran in C was going to be able to get back into the winning columns and maybe get a KO TKO in this battle of big strikers. Didn't go that way. Rosta gets the second round submission, the Darce choke. Not even an easy submission, not even a rear naked or something that, guillotine that a lot of people throw. The Darce choke at 3 minutes and 29 seconds into the second round. Rosta was coming forward right away while C was trying to kind of throw the kicks out there and end up keeping him away. Rosta got a takedown, ends up in the clinch in the fence. Landed some good shots of himself to the head and body. Late takedown by Rosta, probably sealed the round the first. I had a 10-9. In the second round, he was coming forward again, catching C with over 1 minute left with the overhand right that stumbled him. Ends up, going down, and Rosta takes his back as he kind of just turtles up and protects himself. He ended up in top position on the mat, threw a few elbows before going to side control, swung all around north-south position, going around the other side, and eventually lands the Darce choke. So it's some high-level submission there for Dalton Rosta. See now 17-9-2 in his career. Rosta 10-1, first submission victory of his career. That's what makes it even more impressive when you throw a Darce choke in your first submission victory. But obviously he didn't feel like people put enough respect on him, and he talked about it after the fight.
I'm the best middleweight on the planet. Don't ever exclude my name again. It's disrespectful, and it's not the truth. I'm the best.
He will now move on to face Aaron Jeffrey next in the semifinals. At lightweight, you also had Mads Burnell versus J.J. Wilson. Burnell, the 31-year-old Danish fighter who's fought in UFC, Bellator, and the PFL, and had won 4 of his last 5, going in against Wilson, the 27-year-old, who hadn't fought by almost 2 years. So, of course, we're going to go Burnell by submission? No. Wilson gets the third round TKO, 4 minutes and 42 seconds, almost at the end of the fight there. Wilson was getting some great takedowns, some side control, especially in the second round, working from the top. We thought that he was in control, and then in the third round, gets the early takedown again, starts unloading on him with 35 seconds left, and eventually the ref jumps in with 18 seconds left to stop the fight and hand it to Wilson, who will fight Rabadanov in the semis. Burnell now 27, Wilson moves to 11-1. You also had Clay Collard versus Alfie Davis. Davis, the 33-year-old English fighter, longtime Bellator guy. No major opponents going against Clay Collard, the 32-year-old from the U.S., longtime UFC and PFL fighter. I lost 4 of his last 5, so we thought maybe Davis by decision. No, that would take too long. He gets a first-round KO, 2 minutes and 12 seconds in. Now, of course, Collard is a guy who's a ground fighter, wants to come in there and take it to the mat. He was trying to do it, trying to get to the clinch. Davis was keeping him out there. And at one point, into the first round, Collard goes for the takedown, and you see his opponent throw a spinning elbow, not a high one, as Collard was obviously going down to the mat, but one that catches him coming low, drops him. He gets on top, starts landing shots. As Collard tries to get up, he gets dropped again before the ref jumps in and stops it. Davis now fights Brent Primus in the semifinals. Collard 25-15 in his career. Davis now 18-5-1. Davis said he almost wasn't able to fight. Had a problem getting his visa, got it last second before he come over here and make his cut, as did another one of his countrymen. You also had Brent Primus getting a big win for him by third round submission, rear naked choke to move on to face Alfie Davis. You had Silveira, as we said, getting the win over Shipman by unanimous decision, 29-28 on all 3 judges' scorecards. And you had Aaron Jeffrey getting the win by split decision, 29-28 on 2 cards, 28-29 on the other card. I thought Rabadanov probably got the decision in my card and my scoring, but that's not the way the PFL judges sort. And now Jeffrey moves on to fight Rosta in the semis.
They're so close that we're barely going to be getting any value on the plus side of things. I think there's a little bit of value on the Blue Jays today, but it's an awesome division. I don't want to see teams running away and be up by 12 games in first place. We want to see teams constantly battling for first place.
They hit a team total. I love that. So as many times as we get bad beats, you do get the same amount of good beats typically in your direction if you wait long enough.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're going to trade Durant, right, it means things are getting weird anyway. Teams are going to, before they go for Durant, they're going to go for Devin Booker. That's just the reality of it.
You get rid of Durant, or do you do the crazy one? Because you're so far out of the West, do you get rid of Booker? Because D-Book will bring you far more in a return.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
11 times now without a major, 14 times at the Masters. He finally has the green jacket. Rory McIlroy.
The best sporting event so far this year. It's better than the Super Bowl. It was better than the NCAA tournament. It had ups and downs. It had roller coaster rides. It had history, legacies. It had everything you could ever possibly want.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What?
How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. We're going to keep talking about the PFL, and like I said, we got this last beginning of the tournament card coming up for the PFL. Last of the first round fights, the big boys, the light heavies, and the heavyweights. That's going to be Thursday, May 1st on ESPN2 and ESPN+. But obviously, before we can get back here and talk to you, so we got to make sure we cover it this week and talk about all these fights coming up. We touched on these when they were first announced. And now let's get into it and tell you what we think is going to happen in some of these fights. Going to be headlined by a light heavyweight battle between Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis, and Razor Rob Wilkinson. Davis, the 40-year-old American, 24-7 with 1 no contest in his career in the UFC and Bellator. Division I wrestler, wins over some high-level opponents like Yoel Romero, Lyoto Machida, Glover Teixeira, Little Nogueira, Alexander Gustafsson. So plenty of guys that you have seen fight at the top levels of MMA over the years. Fighting against Wilkinson, the 33-year-old Australian who's 19-3 with 1 no contest. Had some fights with the UFC, also the PFL. Was 2022 light heavyweight tournament champion for the PFL, so knows about high-level fights as well. 10 wins by KO, 7 by submission. Going to be a great battle between these guys. Can go many different ways, obviously, depending on who controls the action. Obviously, a guy like Dave is going to want to probably more grapple, take it to the mat, and neutralize his opponent. You're going to want Wilkinson probably to get on the feet and keep it standing, stuff those takedowns. I think he's going to win. I'm going to go with the younger fighter here. As tough as Phil Davis is, this can go either way, especially because I think it's going to decision. But I'm going to roll with Wilkinson by decision on this one. The first fight at heavyweight as the co-main event here, Valentin Moldanovsky versus Sergey Bilostiani. Moldavsky, of course, the 33-year-old Russian, 13-4, 1 no contest, 8 wins by decision, former interim Bellator heavyweight champion. Fighting against his countryman here, 13-3, 8 wins by KO. He had 2 fights with the PFL and Bellator before this big fight that he's going to be going with. I'm going to go with Moldavsky. Even though he's a little bit older, he's had the high-level experience here against some of the top-level opponents, a little bit better competition. I think he's going to get the decision victory, kind of slow it down against his more strike-heavy opponent, who's going to try to get, of course, the victory by knocking your head off. At light heavyweight, you also have Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Carl Moore. Carlos Jr., the 35-year-old Brazilian, is a world champion grappler. 12 of his wins are by submission in a 16-6 record over his career. Former UFC fighter who won 2021 PFL Light Heavyweight Championship. He's been 6-0 with 1 no contest in 3 years fighting for the PFL. Moore, the 33-year-old from Ireland, is 12-3 in his record. Former Bellator fighter, was on a 4-fight win streak before losing to Corey Anderson last March by decision. Both guys who have some high-level experience, who have fought some of the best. I'm going to roll with the slightly more experienced Carlos Jr. here. He's won the tournament before, not obviously this format, but he's fought some of the highest level guys you can fight in these organizations that these guys have both fought in. I think he's going to use that submission attack to try to neutralize his opponent and get the win that way. Light heavyweight battle between Carl Albrechtsen and Simeon Powell as well. Albrechtsen, the 31-year-old Swede, 14-6 record, 7 by KO over the course of his career. Former Risen and Bellator fighters, lost 3 of his last 4. Now coming in there against Powell, a 26-year-old fighter out of England, who is 10-1, 4 wins by KO, TKO, 3 submission, 3 decision. The former PFL fighter, or current PFL fighter, who's fought in this organization before, is very well versed in all facets of the game. Won his first 8 fights before losing for the first time in December 2023. So this guy can, fight this however it ends up going, no matter what the position is. I think his, well-rounded experience is a little bit, lesser age. I think he's gonna be a little faster than Albrechtsen, who's fought at different, weight classes. I think he's going to win. And you know what? I'm gonna take him by TKO. I think maybe he ends up with this one on the mat and can end this with a little bit of ground and pound. I'm going with Simeon Powell over Albrechtsen. Then the prelim card, you got heavyweight Alexander Romanov versus Tim Johnson. Romanov, the 34-year-old Moldovan, 18-3 in his career, 10 wins by submission. Former UFC fighter going against another former UFC fighter who's also fought for the Bellator and PFL. 18-11 is his record, and that is Tim Johnson, the 40-year-old American. Now he's coming off that loss to Vadim Nemkov by rear naked choke in January. It was a short notice fight. Now coming in here with a little bit more camp, but I think Romanov, the younger, more well-rounded fighter, is going to be able to neutralize Johnson. Johnson doesn't want it to go to the mat. He wants it to stay on the feet. I think you're going to have the Moldovan take him down and get the submission victory and move on in this heavyweight tournament. Linton Vassell also fighting at heavyweight against Oleg Popov. Vassell, the 41-year-old English fighter, 24-10 in his career. Former Bellator fighter, 10 KO, TKO wins, 8 submission, 6 decisions. So obviously well-rounded in his long career. Wins over guys like Tim Johnson, Valentin Moldavsky. But we last saw him in a loss to Popov in 2024 heavyweight semifinals. So now he's going against a 33-year-old Russian who beat him last year, 19-2. He was the 2024 heavyweight tournament runner-up for the PFL. 9 wins by KO, TKO, 7 by decision. These guys know each other. I think it's going to play out just like we saw last year, with Popov getting the victory this time by TKO. Also at light heavyweight, you have Sullivan Cauley versus Marcelo Nunez. Cauley, the 28-year-old American, is 6-1, 5 wins by KO, TKO. All of his pro fights in Bellator in his career. Last fought in August of 2023, though, so been a little bit of a layoff here. Does he have that ring rust when he steps in against the experienced Nunez, a 36-year-old Brazilian who is 11-2, 8 wins by submission, the former World Series of Fighting and current PFL fighter, won 2 of his last 2 fights and 6 of his last 7. So on a bit of a roll against Cauley, who of course has a great record but hasn't fought in a while, doesn't have necessarily the experience of the high-level opponents that Nunez has in his career. I'm going to go Nunez by submission. When you're going to fight a guy who's got a great record, but most of those are by knockout, I think he's going to drag him to the mat, drag him into deeper waters, be patient, and eventually get the submission victory for Nunez. And then you also have Babley versus Nascimento in the heavyweight battle. Babley, the 29-year-old English fighter, 5-1, 3 by KO, TKO, 2 by decision, fought for Bellator and the PFL. He's coming off his first loss, which is a split decision loss last November, going against his new opponent because he was supposed to fight Puya Rahmani, of course, the Iranian fighter who we talked about when we heard all these different announcements for who was going to be in this tournament, that he had, not a huge record, but was very big on social media, looking to make a big splash. Well, apparently he's looking to make that splash without getting the approval of the guys who had him under contract. Still under contract by another league. Their story is that he told them a bunch of different excuses of why he couldn't fight in contract negotiations, even though they're trying to give him more stuff. And then just all of a sudden this fight was announced. So they said, we're not letting you go. You're with us. So he is not available for this fight. So now Nascimento, the 32-year-old Brazilian, steps in, 11-3 record, 1 no contest, 6 wins by submission, coming off of 4-3, 1 no contest in the UFC. Had back-to-back losses, looking to get his first victory here for the PFL. I think he does. I think, again, using that submission victory, that drag him down to deep waters, his opponent, and get the win there by submission.
Vegas knows how to show love to our everyday heroes. So if you're a first responder, you are in for some perks. Lots of hotels and casino offer big discounts to any first responders who can show valid work or volunteer ID. So treat yourself to a discounted stay. You deserve it. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Hasn't been a ton of indication that Cleveland is even looking at anybody outside of Travis Hunter. The Giants, yes, have worked out Shador Sanders.
I do think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. Not because they deserve to be first round, have a first round grade on them per se, but the fact that you get the extra year of control, somebody's going to slide into one of those 30, 31, or 32 slots and grab a quarterback.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
They're so close that we're barely going to be getting any value on the plus side of things. I think there's a little bit of value on the Blue Jays today, but it's an awesome division. Like, I don't want to see teams running away and be up by 12 games in first place. We want to see teams constantly battling for first place.
They hit a team total. I love that. So as many times as we get bad beats, you do get the same amount of good beats typically in your direction if you wait long enough.
Pro Baseball today. Only on SportsGrid. This is Greg. He bet a long snapper would go in the second round.
The long snapper from Florida is still waiting for his name to be called.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. BEJ SportsGrid draft coverage starts Thursday at 7:30 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid, and we have another great card coming up in a couple of weeks for Lights Out Extreme Fighting. LXOF 24 is going to be happening, of course, out there in California, and it's going to be headlined by a name you know and I've seen many times over the years in a bunch of different other MMA organizations. And as Tyrell Fortune, the heavyweight who joins us now, we're looking forward to seeing him make his Lights Out debut. He'll be the one headlining that card against Carl Ciantufafa. Sorry, I butchered that probably many times. But Tyrell, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. We're looking forward to seeing your debut with Lights Out. Now, you're a guy who's, of course, been fighting for a while. You've been fighting in many organizations for a long time with Bellator. Had a couple fights with the PFL. So, what drew you now to come in here and fight with Lights Out and fight for Sean Merriman and this organization?
Main thing is I wanted to leave PFL to have an opportunity to fight in the UFC. So Lights Out is just my road to the UFC and trying to just get as many fights as I can to make that happen.
And, Merriman's a guy who is great with that, who's been very, outspoken with that. A lot of promoters, obviously, they're going to want to hold on to guys as much as they can. You're their commodity. Without you, they don't have, fans watching. They don't have guys that want to see these fights. So for a name like you to be coming into Lights Out and, Merriman to be absolutely okay with a guy like you saying, hey, this is just a stop. We've had many Lights Out fighters. They all talk about wanting to make it up to, the UFC, make it to, the best of the best. So how important do you think it is to have a guy like Merriman running this organization who is not only open but encouraging his fighters to, have goals that are well beyond, what he's putting out there right now?
For fighters, we need promoters like him. I mean, he makes that process easier, and he understands the journey that we're on. So it makes it a lot easier for a fighter to be able to come and commit to a company that they know where your end goal is and know what journey you're on. So it was a perfect fit for me to come here and join Lights Out.
And we're looking forward to seeing your first fight. When you look at the fights that you've had over the years in Bellator, you've had plenty of big names that people have watched for years. Guys like Lyndon Vassell, Mitrione, Tim Johnson. What are some of the favorite fights that you've had so far in your career? With obviously a great record at 14-3, you've made great runs against some big names that people have known from, not just Bellator, but of course have come from the UFC and other organizations before. What are some of the favorite fights that you've had so far in your career as you continue to try to move on and move up?
I would say any fight that I won. I mean, not really even. I would say more of the fights that I lost too, because those were probably the biggest growing phases for me. Is going back and then figuring out how to deal with it, and then just growing from that. You know, I mean, you learn the most when you lose. The wins they just go by, but the losses stick with you for a little bit. So I would say the losses for me, the one with Linton, Tim Johnson, and even this last one where I got caught in a heel hook at the beginning of the fight. So it's just those are the biggest learning phases for me. So I'd say the losses stick with me the most.
Spoken like a true veteran, I think. You know, you have that that experience that you have, 14-3. You know, you've seen a lot over the years training for that. You know, how do you feel where you are in your career right now? You know, do you feel like maybe, obviously you're always going to feel great, hopefully, physically, besides the obvious nicks and bruises and things that you get training for fights, because you're never going to be at 100% when your job is, you fight to train to fight. But how are you feeling now as a vet, at your age and having seen all these different styles, different fights, different places, mentally where you are? Do you feel like you're, at your best that you've ever been just from your experience and what you've learned over these years?
No, I think I'm still getting better every day. I don't even consider myself a vet. I would say I'm more like a sophomore, you know what I'm saying, or a junior. I'm just like Michael Jordan. I just went bald, you know what I'm saying? So I just cut the hair off, and now it's time for me to go on a championship run. I'm just looking for the opportunity to prove myself as one of the best in the world. So that's really all I'm here for.
Now you're facing your opponent, obviously, as we talked about. He's got years on you. He's even more experienced than that. He's been around. He's also fought Bellator, PFL, different organizations. What have you seen from, he obviously doesn't have the same impressive record that you have, but what have you seen as you watch and prepare for him that makes you excited for this fight?
Like you said, he's a tough guy. He's been around for a very long time. He's had a lot of experience fights with guys who come from UFC, Bellator, PFL as well. So no, I'm just excited to see what he brings. He seems more like a old style Muay Thai fighter with his high guard, low kicks, a hook, and a little bit of overhand. So I'm just excited to fight the style and fight the guy and see what he brings.
Well, we're excited for you to have this fight. We're looking forward to it. May 10th out there in California. Lights Out Extreme Fighting 24. Headline, of course, by Tyrell Fortune. Thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing your first fight with Lights Out and seeing what comes from that with your career afterwards. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Here's a tip. Some machines and online games have higher average payouts than others. Want to try to maximize your odds? Well, do some research online to find games which have the highest RTP or return to player percentage. So now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
They're so close that we're barely going to be getting any value on the plus side of things. I think there's a little bit of value on the Blue Jays today, but it's an awesome division. Like, I don't want to see teams running away and be up by 12 games in first place. We want to see teams constantly battling for first place.
They hit a team total. I love that. So as many times as we get bad beats, you do get the same amount of good beats, typically in your direction, if you wait long enough.
Pro Baseball today, only on SportsGrid. The game is on. The stakes are high, but the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that ring. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. Now we're going to shift gears, go over to the PKFC, who had a nice fight card last week out there in Omaha that we're going to recap right now. Later on, we'll preview what's coming up in Italy this week, so they're busy as per usual, as they've been most of this year. But let's get right into what happened this past weekend out there. BKFC Fight Night in Omaha, April 18th. It was on there for you to watch on the BKFC app, and it was, obviously, as they usually do in Omaha when they return out there to Nebraska, a lot of guys, local fighters that have been for the BKFC for a while, and then some new faces and some great wins by some people, maybe propelling themselves up into some title contention. We will see. Let's start off, of course, with the main event. Dakota Cochran versus Marcus Edwards. Of course, Cochran, the local fighter from Omaha, always fighting there, 38-year-old former MMA fighter in Bellator. Had 4 straight wins coming into this fight against Edwards, a 36-year-old who's another former MMA fighter, had been undefeated in the BKFC coming in here. We thought Cochran was going to take the decision in this one. We thought that, this guy's shown with the winning streak that he was on, the patience, the poise, but what we didn't account for was the tenacity that Edwards was going to show, and he came right out swinging and gets himself a first-round TKO 1 minute and 8 seconds into the fight. Edwards coming off the scratch right away, aggressive, coming forward, quickly ending combo, dropping Cochran just 25 seconds in. Edwards was already dancing before Cochran even got up, pretty much, knowing in his mind, I guess, that the fight was already over. It was not yet, but would soon be, because about another 20 seconds later, another couple combos, drops Cochran again, gets back up, and then finally another 20 or so seconds to just over a minute into the fight, just lands a bunch of combos in a row that puts Cochran on the mat for the 3rd time, and he just kind of turtles up, covers, and it's just clear that he is not going to be able to compete in this fight that night, and the ref steps in there, stops the fight. Cochran now falls to 7-3 in BKFC, while Edwards is now 4-0, remains undefeated, and gave us a little taste in the ring of what he wants after this win.
Yes, sir. Let's go. I've been calling him out. Him and I have, we've exchanged some words. It's been pretty much cordial, but he knows I'm coming. I let him know. He knows. He told me to wait my turn. I waited. I'm here. Let's go. Let's be like, what's next? That was he's a number 2 ranked dude. Who's next? You want to give me Mike Perry? Let's go.
Of course, talking about the top of the division there, you got guys like Mike Perry, you got Dave Mundell with the belt. He wants to climb up those rankings. He wants to get involved in that mix there. We'll see if he gets that opportunity. I mean, sitting there with a record of 4-0, it's almost like, how can you keep the guy out? We will have to see what the BKFC does with him next, but an impressive win for Edwards there. Beating Dakota Cochran, of course, was high up in that division himself. He was number 3. You got other guys like Donald Sanchez in there at 4 maybe. Zev Vincent was number 5. He lost. Coltrane was number 6. He had lost to Vincent before that. So, if you're looking at where the rankings are in that division, it really is kind of Sanchez, Perry, or championship now for Edwards. There really is no one else in his path, I would say, even though he's not in those rankings, obviously deserves to be so when you have a great performance like that against the number 3 guy ranked in the division. Also on that fight card, we had a welterweight battle between Bryce Henry and Derek Finley. Finley, the 44-year-old from Indiana, former glove boxer who had won his last 3 in the BKFC, was going in against Baby Yaga. Bryce Henry, fighter out of Florida who was undefeated in the BKFC, 4-0 before this fight. Didn't see him fight since last February, so was there some ring rust, or was he going to be right back to the form that we had seen before? Well, the answer is right back to what we'd seen before, because we thought he'd get a 3rd-round TKO. Decided that wasn't long enough. That was too long. It wasn't quick enough. Henry goes right in there. 2nd-round TKO, 1 minute and 40 seconds over Finley. Honestly, I don't know how it got out of the 1st round, because you see right there, you attacked him right off the start there, right off the scratch, landed a stiff jab in the first 10 seconds that backed Finley up, had him start to covering up already. Just 10 seconds into the fight, Finley's already throwing the hands up, getting up against the ropes. I didn't know how he was going to survive. There were some times that he locked him up, tried to grapple. There were other times that he, just kind of just took some shots and ate them. He did go down, but, he stayed in there. Gets to the 2nd round. Finley started coming forward. You can tell that obviously he knew he was going to be in trouble if he kept backing up like he did in that 1st round. Tried to be more aggressive, but Henry started hitting him, coming forward again, takes right back into the aggressive part of the action, controlling the fight, and eventually just started picking Finley apart before getting him against the ropes, dropped him, gets him again later in the round, and he gets up and walks around. So you would see, okay, we're going to get back into this, but must have said something to the ref. He's just like, I'm done, because the ref stops it right there, and now Finley falls to 3-3, while Henry goes to 5-0. And when you're looking at that division, the welterweight division, Finley got to get himself in the mix here with some of those great wins that he has had now in this run in the BKFC. It's just amazing what he's done. How could you keep this guy out of the mix. Obviously, he's had some inaction for a little bit, but getting that great win in a dominating fashion, you got to start talking about his name in that top 5 and in that title chase once again. Before that, you had a middleweight battle between Dionisio Ramirez and Zeb Vincent. Now, Zeb Vincent, of course, locally in the area guy, not from Omaha, but knows those fans well. Has fought there before. The 30-year-old, very feast or famine, as we talked about. Either he's going to finish you or you're going to finish him. Came off a 4th-round TKO win over Doug Coltrane, who was in the top 5 when he fought him last August in Kansas. Fighting Ramirez, a 38-year-old fighter from California, former MMA fighter who was only 1-0. He got a win over Kane in his first fight in Omaha last May. Coming in here against a guy who's got some good experience and on a good run here in Vincent. We thought Vincent was going to get the TKO win somewhere in like the 3rd or 4th round. Ramirez gets it in the first. Comes in there, and at first it looked like Vincent was going to control this fight. He was controlling the distance. He was coming forward. He was aggressive. He was, in the center of the ring, letting some good shots at distance. But it all changed. One punch changed everything. Ramirez had a little, shots here and there as Vincent would be coming in. But there you saw the right hand that attacked him, knocked him back. He kept going after him when he gets back up. Later on, he even kind of shoves him to the mat. It looked like it was a surprising end to it because Ramirez landed some shots. Vince is kind of like going down more to protect himself than falling. And Ramirez kind of just shoves him head first into the mat. The ref warns him. Vincent gets back up, but that's it. Fight's over. He didn't want to fight anymore. It seemed like when you see the replay that maybe he was having some problems seeing with the vision. He started blinking a lot right before he caught those shots that threw him off balance before he went down to the mat. So I guess there was some kind of eye injury maybe that was going on from some of those shots he ate. And that is the end for Zeb Vincent. Now falls to 3-2. While Ramirez gets to 2-0. That's a big win for Ramirez. And we're looking forward to seeing what is coming up later for him. Also, I forgot to mention when we talked about that Henry fight, we had some post-fight sound from him after his win over Finley. You're not going to hear much of it because the man was very flamboyant in what he's saying, but obviously looking for some love, whether it's in 155 or 165. He knows he's one of the best.
Give me the belt. I don't if it's 55, 65. I'm going to chase whatever. Just give me the belt. Let's do it.
He doesn't care where it is. 155, 165. He wants that title shot, so we'll see if Baby Yaga gets that. As and then we said Ramirez had a great win, 2-0 now. We'll see where he starts to fall in that middleweight division. Obviously, Vincent in that top 6 in the rankings, so maybe that moves him up. Maybe he jumps over him and Coltrane and gets into that title shot, title rankings at least. Maybe at 2-0 it's a little premature, but we'll see. Maybe in one more fight he can be in those rankings if he has such an impressive performance like he just did against a top opponent. Also on the fight card, you had the return of James Get Down Brown versus Ramiro Figueroa. This is going to be a big fight. Get Down Brown coming in here last minute, 3-1 to BKFC, coming off that loss that he suffered at the hands of H.D. Davis. This is a guy who was unbeaten, who was in the title talk, then gets that, pretty decisive win for H.D. Davis. He was beating him up most of that fight. Going against Figueroa, a guy who was 2-0 in the BKFC coming in here, was looking to make his name even bigger for himself, looking to get into 3-0 territory, looking to get into maybe those rankings. Did not work out his way. Get Down Brown gets the unanimous decision. Now, he got it 48-47 on all 3 judges' scorecards. I gave it 50-45. Maybe you want to go 49-46, okay, but pretty much all the fight was Figueroa trying to come forward, Get Down Brown picking him apart from the outside. Every now and then, Get Down Brown would be the aggressor and come forward and push the pace a little bit more, but it was mostly Figueroa coming forward and Brown striking him from the outside, counter-striking, picking him apart with that extra reach, with that stiff right jab that he had out in front, and giving Figueroa problems the whole fight. You could see the blood on Figueroa that he had coming throughout the fight. But James Brown gets the win to get back into the winning column. You also had strawweight Shell getting a unanimous decision win to go to 3-0 in the women's division. You had P-Town Wilson go to 4-3, and Alonzo Martinez go to 4-1 with unanimous decisions. So a lot of great fights in Omaha. They always produce on the fight nights out there, and they did once again.
This is Greg. He bet a long snapper would go in the second round.
The long snapper from Florida is still waiting for his name to be called.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. BEJ. SportsGrid draft coverage continues Friday at 7 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and you know, launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Hasn't been a ton of indication that Cleveland is even looking at anybody outside of Travis Hunter. The Giants, yes, have worked out Shador Sanders.
I do think there's going to be at least 3 quarterbacks taken in the first round. Not because they deserve the first round, have a first round grade on them per se, but the fact that you get the extra year of control, somebody's going to slide into one of those 30, 31, or 32 slots and grab a quarterback.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You cannot shoot 2 of 17 from 3 and think you're beating Steph and Jimmy Buckets, a.k.a. Playoff Jimmy, Playoff him, Himmy, whatever you want to call him. You can't shoot that bad and compete in the playoffs versus the Warriors. SGA wasn't even that good. You want to talk about non-competitive series? People want to talk about getting rid of play-in. Maybe we need to get rid of the 8 seed because this 8 seed got their ass kicked.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. We continue to talk BKFC. We're going to have a look ahead coming up to that card in Florence, Italy this upcoming weekend. But before that, let's talk about what's going to be going down in Clearwater, Florida on May 2nd. Big card there. Lots of fighters that we know and have watched over the years, especially from that Shift Combat family. One of those guys, of course, is the former champion of the light heavyweight division, Jared, Captain Deadpool Ward. And Jared joins us now. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it as you get ready for this upcoming fight. Before we get into the fight, the fight against Richmond, the fight you have coming up against Creer, I want to check in and know how is the recovery going. You guys obviously suffered those heavy, issues with your home after the hurricane last year. We talked to you right before the fight in December about what you were going through, trying to prepare for that. How are things at home right now as you guys have been rebuilding? Is everything back to where you want it to be? Are we still working on things? How have things been going?
Yeah, it's good, man. It's 95% done. Everything has been very, very livable, very comfortable the last, few months. It's just a few cosmetic things that need to be finished up. But, that stuff can come at any time. So not in too much of a rush for it like I was just to get back in the house.
Yeah, we were talking about that when we talked to you last. And obviously, you are a guy who's never going to make, excuses. But obviously all that going on into the fight against Richmond, you talked about it before, that, you were working as a fireman, obviously serving your community. You were training for the fight at the same time while trying to rebuild the house, a lot of work that you were doing yourself. So a lot of stuff going on at the same time. How did you feel, obviously going into the fight, you weren't going to use that excuse, but as you look back at it afterwards, did it become an issue for you when you had so much on your plate at once, trying to get it all done and focus on it all?
No, still not an excuse, man. At the end of the day, I still took the fight. I didn't have to. I'm not one to pull out of a fight for, any feasible reason. But no, man. Other than being like a little underweight, my home situation didn't have any pending on the outcome. I still felt good mentally and physically going in that fight. At the end of the day, man, he caught me with a couple phantom punches that I just didn't see coming, and it was well timed and well placed. So, hats off to him. No animosity. Of course, I want the rematch because I feel like lightning's not going to strike twice like that. But nah, man, it was a good fight, and hats off to him.
Yeah, I mean, early on in the fight, I just rewatched it a couple days ago as we were getting ready to talk to you, and you didn't seem off in the beginning of the fight. It seemed like, you were going to your game plan. You getting in there, you're using the length to get some good shots on him. You were coming forward, being the aggressor. You were getting some good shots and getting out of the way for a lot of it. And then all of a sudden, that right just finally found its way in that first round. You know, he didn't throw a lot early on, but, you know, we know that of him. He is a very precise striker. And, you know, when he finds that spot, it could be lights out for anybody. It doesn't matter who. So you ate the one, you got back up. But obviously, you know, the power of it, you weren't completely back, you know, to normal sorts. And then he jumped on it and, you know, finished the job. But what do you, have you looked back at that fight now a couple times? You know, as you get ready for this fight, do you watch that in training camp, see what happened and see what you want to fix for the next one? Or is it just kind of one, you know, just it is what it is, and unless you fight him again, that one's in the trash bin, and you focus on the next guy?
Yeah, I still look at it, you know, just to see if there's anything I could have done, you know, different or better. And, you know, where he did catch me, you know, it was right in the temple, and it wasn't even necessarily like a devastating punch, you know, power-wise. It didn't even leave a bruise, but it was perfectly in the right spot. And I did have my hand up, but, you know, a lot of people don't know, you know, bare knuckle wise, is that, you know, since you're not wearing gloves, you're hitting with something smaller and you're blocking with something smaller. So even though my hand was on the cheekbone like it's supposed to be, he just went right over top and caught me in the temple. You know, I was definitely a little confused, but I had, you know, enough spirit to get up. And the second knockdown, I was, you know, felt like I could get up again, but you know, the ref must have saw something in my face that he didn't like, and just, you know, he didn't give me the count, he just called it. And I'm not complaining about that either, because even though, like, you know, as a fighter, I'm like, man, I wish would have had the chance and you know, got the opportunity to keep fighting. But, you know, retrospect, after everything's passed, I'm like, yeah, I had a good little concussion, I had a little memory loss, so you know, the ref was doing his job and protecting like he's supposed to.
Well, we're glad he did, because obviously, you know, protecting you, keeping the fighter safe is what their job is. And then we get to talk to you guys again, and we can see you again, as opposed to what could happen if, you know, more permanent damage was done. So we're glad that now you're recovered and you're back in here for the BKFC, trying to climb back up that mountain to get that title once again. Obviously, you know, you have a fight in front of you, and if you get the rematch against Richmond, we'll have to wait a little bit, as he's going to be fighting Dyer just a week after you. You know, your arch nemesis, D-Day Dyer, getting that title shot. We're waiting for that third matchup with you guys. Now it looks like he's going to get Richmond for now. We'll see where that goes and who you end up fighting, if you can get past your next opponent. But you're fighting the Dark Knight Creer here in Clearwater coming up very soon. How are you feeling as you're preparing for this fight? What are some of the new things you've been working on in training that you're going to focus on with this guy Creer, who is, you know, had some good fights, had some, you know, up and down performances. He's not in that top five. He's not necessarily on your level as far as rankings go. So how do you prepare for a guy when, you know, now instead of being the guy chasing the belt or the guy preparing for that title fight or preparing to defend it, now you're just facing another guy? Is there any difference in your training or your focus, or is it just all, you know, you got to be at max prep all the time and treat everybody like they're the champ?
Yeah, man, I definitely don't overlook them. You know, at the end of the day, you know, rankings don't come into play. It's like, hey, we're both, you know, large grown men, and you know, if we've seen time and time again, just a few punches can change everything. So I do like the matchup. I think he's a good boxer. You know, he's a tall, lanky guy, and it's kind of fun, you know, because aside from, you know, fighting Jomi, I don't usually get to fight guys taller than me. So I kind of enjoy it, because it's something different, not run of the mill. So yeah, I think you know, even regardless of his wins and losses, they usually tend to go the distance for him, as far as I've seen. So, you know, he's a tough dude, and I see a good battle and a good one for the fans coming up.
It should be a great card. We got you on there, of course. We got Ryan Reber fighting on that card, Jomi Escoboza, Crystal Pittman returning, and another title now for Shift Combat with the Black Widow bringing home the belt for overseas. Congratulations to you guys. I'm looking forward to your fight coming up.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
They're so close that we're barely going to be getting any value on the plus side of things. I think there's a little bit of value on the Blue Jays today, but it's an awesome division. Like, I don't want to see teams running away and be up by 12 games in first place. We want to see teams constantly battling for first place.
They hit a team total. I love that. So as many times as we get bad beats, you do get the same amount of good beats typically in your direction if you wait long enough.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're going to trade Durant, right, it means things are getting weird anyway. Teams are going to, before they go for Durant, they're going to go for Devin Booker. That's just the reality of it.
You get rid of Durant, or do you do the crazy one? Because you're so far out of the West, you get rid of Booker because D-Book will bring you far more in a return.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
11 times now without a major, 14 times at the Masters. He finally has the green jacket. Rory McIlroy.
The best sporting event so far this year. It's better than the Super Bowl. It was better than the NCAA tournament. It had ups and downs. It had roller coaster rides. It had history, legacies. It had everything you could ever possibly want.
Tyrell, coast to coast, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. Great to catch up with our guy, Captain Deadpool, Jared Warren, of course, trying to climb back up that mountain and regain that light heavyweight title that he unfortunately lost in December, but always positive, always looking forward to the future, and we'll see what is next for him as he fights the Dark Knight, Joseph Creer, in Clearwater on May 2nd. But we got fights before that. We can't be looking too far ahead. We got fights this weekend for the BKFC. Overseas, they're going back out of country, over to Florence, Italy. The first time ever they'll be fighting in Italy. This Saturday, they will have a card. It's going to be 1 o'clock Eastern on DAZN, BKFC Italy, and it's going to be changed. That's right. We found out last week that while we're supposed to have a rematch between Chris Camozzi and Lorenzo Hunt, the Juggernaut, making his return after the suspension for what was alleged performance enhancers in the fight against Mick Tyrell. Well, now he is injured apparently, and a new person will be stepping up. And when you have a fight organization that's based in Philly, of course, you're going to have Rocky compared to it all the time. So why not bring a Rocky-like story? And that's what they're going to try to do here with this fight card in Florence, Italy. As Chris Camozzi is still on the card, will be defending that title, but going to be defending it against Andrea Bici. Now, Bici is an Italian fighter from Florence, Italy. The 28-year-old, known as Italian Thunder, is going to be fighting for the title. He has not fought in the BKFC yet. He is 3-1 in other bare-knuckle fighting leagues, coming off a split decision loss in his last fight. But Dave Feldman told our man Brian Social last week on his show that, it was too hard to try to get someone from the U.S., someone that's involved with the BKFC already over here and maybe in that top 5 ranking system, to have them ready and get them on a plane and get them to Florence, getting things like visas and travel and all that stuff set up. So they're going to give a shot to a local guy. That's right. Just like Rocky. Just like when Creed said, all right, I'll give the Philadelphia fighter a shot in Philly. Well, now the Philadelphia organization giving a shot to the Italian fighter in Florence, in Bici, who's going to be making his debut against Camozzi, the 38-year-old American who is holding the cruiserweight title right now. Of course, fought Lorenzo Hunt for it, lost. Lorenzo Hunt got suspended, got stripped. Camozzi went and won that belt against Sawyer DP by first-round KO in October. This is his first title defense for the former UFC and PFL fighter. He's fought in all different disciplines and organizations, whether it be MMA, whether it be kickboxing, whether it be boxing, and now bare-knuckle fighting. He's been all around, fought all around the world, all different people, all different types. Now going to be fighting in Italy against this local fighter, Bici. And while it's always a nice story when the small underdog gets his shot at the champion, just like the first Rocky movie, I think the champ's going to hold the title here. I think he gets the win. He's going to have a good height and reach advantage on his opponent. Obviously, the experience, because Wabici has fought in other promotions. This is the big one as far as most people are concerned in bare knuckle boxing. So I'm going to go with Camozzi to hold on to his title. Probably get a stoppage, I'd say, by the second round, because we know how quickly he starts, we know how powerful he can be, and how much he can overwhelm the opponent. Maybe his home turf for the Italian fighter, but this is going to be a huge moment, huge show. I'm going to take Camozzi to come back with his belt. Also on that card, you have Rico Franco versus Jimmy Sweeney, another debuter for the BKFC, but don't be fooled on this one, because Jimmy Sweeney has probably some of the most experience you have ever heard of in a bare knuckle fighter. The guy is 19-4, the 40-year-old from Ireland, in bare knuckle fighting with 13 KOs in the BKB and other bare knuckle leagues around the world. This guy has been fighting bare knuckle for a long time. There's even stories about like how many more wins he has that have not been recorded in actual organizations. So this guy is a legit fighter for sure, and has fought Rico Franco before. This is going to be the third time these two are fighting. And I think in their words, they said, hopefully the last. These guys, they both respect each other. They both think the other one is a great fighter, but they're kind of sick and tired of fighting each other, because in 2019, there was a 6th round TKO stoppage for Rico Franco. In 2021, you had a 4th round doctor stoppage for Sweeney. So now, who will get the linchpin here in this trilogy? Who gets the ultimate victory between these guys? Franco, of course, a 32-year-old from the UK, is 9-3 in bare knuckle fighting overall, 3-1 in the BKFC. Won his first 3 fights before losing a decision to Austin Trout in Spain for the title. So didn't get that win. Now he comes back here and faces an old foe. You're also going to have Germany's Nicole Shaver returning to BKFC for the second time after her 2nd round TKO in Bulgaria last March. A very popular up-and-comer who maybe she'll make her way over here to fight against some of the best in the U.S. as well. You can see the power she can possess there, even at her smaller stature. So some great fights here. Some C. Panda Banks also on the card for this Italy card. He'll be looking to win his 2nd in a row after losing to Perdomo a couple fights ago. He had a 3rd round TKO in Philly in January. So again, looking to get back into the winning ways and get a winning streak going for him. Some great fights, some fighters that we don't know from over in Europe that we're going to get introduced to for the first time, but should be a great card for the BKFC in Italy. Can't wait to watch it and talk to you all about it next week here on SportsGrid. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch up with you next week.
This is Greg. He bet a long snapper would go in the 2nd round.
The long snapper from Florida is still waiting for his name to be called.
Now this is EJ. EJ tuned into SportsGrid's draft coverage. He checked the app, tracked the markets, followed the pros. He didn't guess. He knew. Be EJ. SportsGrid draft coverage continues Friday at 7 p.m. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start, so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid. If you're going to trade Durant, right, it means things are getting weird anyway. Teams are going to, before they go for Durant, they're going to go for Devin Booker. That's just the reality of it.
You get rid of Durant, or do you do the crazy one? Because you're so far out of the West, do you get rid of Booker? Because D-Book will bring you far more in a return.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.